think this is a relatively well-known one for the time that it happened anyway. In this case, took place in the early 2000s, like the 1990s and the early 2000s. And before I get started, I just really appreciate it if you left me a comment, a like, or subscribe to my channel. You know, convince the YouTube algorithm that my videos are worth showing to people. Yeah, so first I'm going to give you a little background on, just like set the scene a little bit. So, Richard Lloyd Perry, the author of a book about this case called People Who Eat Darkness, said, quote, "No other race has expended the imagination and creativity that the Japanese have put into the packaging of paid sex. In order to veil the obvious, sex businesses package their services under a bewildering range of names, so numerous and fast-changing that it's a struggle for the non-specialist to keep track." The book goes on. Hostess bars, and host bars as well, aren't quite brothels, and the services they offer don't go as far as sex. Patrons, usually middle-aged, wealthy Japanese businessmen, sit around a table conversing and singing. Karaoke is very popular. Pretty much they pay just for the company of pretty women who pour them drinks and talk to them. All of this is under the watchful eye of Mama-san, and the girls are not allowed to leave the club with customers, though that's not really true because it's possible to have hostesses come out to other places with customers. I almost said places. There's no nudity or sex, and although Japanese women work in hostess bars too, probably the vast majority of them, hostess bars I mean, not Japanese women, Western women were highly sought after. Forgot to put my phone on silent, or on airplane mode. Western women are highly sought after and can command high fees. To be honest, I don't know if that's true at the moment, or if that's more of like a 90s to early 2000s thing. Perry, that author, notes that the owner of a club like Casablanca, which will come up later, is usually a highly gifted manager who moves through the club noting those that are not successful, like hostesses that don't have good chemistry with their customers, and he'll withdraw a girl from one table and transfer her to another where the chemistry might be different. The system's protocol dates back to the centuries-old geisha tradition. Customers indicate their approval of a hostess by purchasing additional time, which is called dohan, with her, and an appealing hostess may increase her salary by increasing her dohan. The girls even encourage their friends to invite them to dance halls, movies, and restaurants outside their place of employment so that they can increase their dohan. So, on to the actual case now. I'm going to start with Carita Ridgway. She was born on March 3rd, 1970 in Claremont, Perth, in Australia. After getting an education in Sydney, Carita eventually settled in the beachside suburb of Clovelly. By the age of 21, Carita had already tried out modeling, but eventually decided to go into acting instead. There's a problem though. Acting classes were expensive, and Australia's economy was going through a major recession at the time. Carita's older sister Samantha decided to move to Tokyo at that time to be with her boyfriend Hideki, and Carita saw an opportunity to make some much-needed cash. She decided to join Samantha in teaching English as a foreign language for a few months and save up enough to pay for acting classes to support her fiancé Robert, who was studying law at the University of South Wales. Carita arrived in Tokyo in late December 1991 and joined Samantha in a house share especially for foreigners, who are known as gaijin, which is just short for gaikokujin, which just means people from a foreign country. So gaijin pretty much literally means just foreigner. The house was in the city's fashionable Kichiuji district. The rooms were rented out on a temporary month-to-month basis, which is fine with Carita since she'd only planned on staying in the country for a little while anyway. Carita, however, ran into problems early in her stay when she was unable to find any work as an English teacher. I don't know how things were in 1990-ish, but I know there's the JET program, which recruits, native English speakers to teach English to Japanese students in Japan. But those programs, especially now, are like their pick of anyone, pretty much, because people are so eager to try and live in Japan, you know. You have to have a bachelor's degree to even qualify for the program, which is unfortunate for someone like me who does not have a bachelor's degree but would be interested in doing that. I don't know if that's how it was in 1991, but I guess they didn't need any English teachers, so she was aware that she'd need to start making money soon, so she changed her focus and replied to an advertisement in an English language newspaper called the Japan Times, seeking Western women to work in Club Ayakoshi, which is a hostess bar in the upscale area of Ginza. She'd only worked there for about 1 month, though. On Friday, February 14th, 1992, Carita and several other hostesses at Club Ayakoshi accepted an invitation from a customer to accompany him to a nearby barbecue restaurant. And like I said, Dohan like that is an uncommon way for hostesses to make extra money. So, since it was a group going together, I'd imagine that Carita felt, relatively safe, and the trip went well enough that Carita ended up leaving with one of the men and, going off on her own, I guess. The clients who take hostesses out on Dohan are pretty much obligated to ensure that the hostess gets back to the hostess bar afterward, so he may have offered her a ride, to go back to the bar. Carita's sister returned to their shared house on the morning of Sunday the 15th of February after spending a few days with her boyfriend and found that Carita was not there. A fellow housemate then gave her a strange message. According to an unknown man who had called the house, Carita had, quote, gone away with friends. The man had hung up without mentioning when she might return. Not trusting the man behind the mysterious phone call, because why would you? Samantha quickly started to worry. The next day, Samantha got a call from a staff member at Hideshima Hospital. Carita had been admitted for acute food poisoning. Rushing to her sister's bedside, Samantha questioned Carita on where she had been, but she got no reply. Carita was already extremely sick and fading in and out of consciousness. All Samantha could do was hold her hand. Staff at the hospital did have some information, though. A Japanese man significantly older than Carita had dropped her off, claiming that she had eaten some bad shellfish. He gave his name as Akira Nishida, then disappeared. Carita's symptoms didn't match up with the story, though. Doctors diagnosed hepatitis, which is a liver infection, basically. They couldn't determine how or where she might have gotten it, but it didn't seem linked with food poisoning. Carita's condition soon worsened, and doctors put her on life support as they fought to save her. She was transferred to Tokyo Women's University Hospital in Shinjuku for intensive treatment, but just shy of 2 weeks after she was first admitted to the hospital, and only a few days short of what would have been her 22nd birthday, Carita suffered organ failure and was declared brain dead. With her family by her side, doctors switched off Carita's life support, and she quietly slipped away. She was cremated 2 days later. It's awfully fast. Despite the suspicious circumstances surrounding Carita's illness, no autopsy was conducted, and her death was attributed to natural causes. Carita's family were unconvinced, though. While Carita had lay dying, her sister Samantha had been receiving strange phone calls from the man who left her at the hospital, Akira Nishida. What he said during those calls was always the same. Carita had gotten sick with food poisoning at the beach resort of Kamakura. He'd done everything he could for Carita, even going so far as to call his private doctor to treat her. Samantha wasn't buying it, though. Why was he trying so hard to convince her? Her suspicions were confirmed by the fact that the caller repeatedly refused to leave a return phone number. I guess it was 91 after all. With the help of Hideki, Samantha begged police to investigate the mysterious caller, but over and over they refused. Carita's family suspected that once they realized Carita was a hostess, they disregarded her case as unimportant. Her mother, Annette Foster, speaking at a press conference in 2007, said, quote, "When we went to the police, our concerns and our suspicions were ignored and laughed at. Samantha and her parents had no choice but to accept the authorities' decision and made arrangements to bring Carita's remains home to Australia, but they would have one last encounter with the mysterious Akira Nishida." Suddenly, after weeks of giving them the runaround, Akira Nishida agreed to meet with Carita's family in person. In an airport hotel which was, I'm assuming, in Japan, but I'm not sure. Carita's parents came face to face with the man that they hoped could give them answers about their beloved daughter's death. Sweating and visibly nervous, Nishida repeated the same story that Carita had fallen ill after eating some bad oysters. But then he pulled out a diamond ring and matching necklace that he claimed he had been planning to give Carita for her birthday, and insisted that her parents accept them instead, saying he loved their daughter very much. Nishida also offered Carita's family a condolence payment, which is mimaikin in Japanese, and that was going to be 50 million yen, which is $359,389. I don't know what that would have been in the 90s, but probably more than that. Condolence payments aren't uncommon in Japan, but this one came with a cost. They'd have to sign a document stating that Carita died because she had been improperly treated by the hospital. Samantha sent the payment for what it was, a bribe. Carita's parents flew back to Australia, I'm assuming without taking the mimaikin, the condolence payment, but I couldn't find any information about that really, to start the process of rebuilding their lives without Carita. Unfortunately, that's all there is about her for the moment in this case. Her case went cold, and when it would get hot again nearly a decade later, their world would be turned upside down once again, and Carita would be forgotten, stuck in the shadow of a victim with a louder and more persistent, or maybe just more well-connected family. So now we're going to move on to Lucie Blackman. Lucie Blackman came from a privileged English family in a posh town in Kent called Seven Oaks. Other articles I read said that they were just middle class, so I'm not sure, but Lucie and her lookalike sister Sophie and her younger brother Rupert all seemed destined to attend the best schools and universities, after which they would settle into comfortable and secure lives. Friends described Lucie as sweet, trusting, and likable. Until Lucie and her best friend, Louise Phillips, decided to become flight attendants for British Airways. Lucie flew the London-Moscow route and realized that the job wasn't glamorous at all, just low-paying and dull, leaving her and Louise exhausted, and both of them ended up deeply in debt. Lucie ended up quitting the airline in the summer of 2000 to go to Tokyo, where she heard that there was a fortune to be made for English-speaking Caucasian blonde women like her in Tokyo's clubs. It was her plan to spend 3 months there, then return home to her family in England to start thinking seriously about her future. I don't know why my head is so itchy right now, but anyway. In May 2000, she entered Japan on a tourist visa, along with Louise Phillips, and they shared a small apartment in Yoyogi, Tokyo. They found hostess jobs at the Roppongi Club, Casablanca, a small living room-sized club with deep, cushiony sofas, which was apparently pretty famous. It was located in a modern, new 6-story building which also housed the notorious Seventh Heaven, the largest strip club in the city, known for its lap dances and other emoluments. I don't know what that means. Supplied by blonde Russian girls and Las Vegas hookers. Lucie was quoted as saying, after her first few days on the job, pouring drinks in, flirting a little with Japanese businessmen 2 and 3 times her age, quote, "I can't believe I'm being paid for doing this." She even found a boyfriend, an American sailor from Yokosuka. Lucie, who was only 21 at the time, had been hostessing for about a month when on July 1st, 2000, she left on a Dohan to go for an afternoon drive to the seashore with a client. She was believed to be wearing a one-piece black dress and black sandals, a silver necklace with a heart-shaped diamond, and to have carried a black handbag. She told her roommate that she would be back in time for a dinner date that evening, but she wasn't. When she still hadn't returned 24 hours later, Louise went to the Azabu police station on July 2nd. Officers there sympathized, but told her that no investigation could be launched until there was some evidence of foul play. After all, they said, as Louise must surely be aware, many young girls disappear for a period of time with male friends. They noted that after all, Lucie was a gaijin hostess, and people in her profession were known to do strange, unpredictable things, especially when they might be in the country illegally, since she was on a tourist visa, not a working visa after all. like, yeah, that's obviously BS. And on July 3rd, she called Lucie's father. Did I say Lucie? I meant Louise. She called Lucie's father in England and told him that she didn't know where Lucie was or what happened to her. So on July 4th, Lucie's younger sister Sophie flew out to Japan to try and find her. And on the 12th of July, their father Tim Blackman, a property developer from the Isle of Wight, arrived in Tokyo as well. Tim spent several days going back and forth with the police, who were conducting an investigation but were also operating in their standard "don't bother us" mode. So Lucie's father, in frustration, turned to the media. On July 13th, he held a high-profile press conference at the British Embassy. I don't know, I pulled that off, but good on him. And primetime news programs in Japan carried the story of the disappearance. He rejected suggestions that his daughter might have run away to escape credit card debts or that she would willingly have joined a religious cult. About 30,000 posters of Lucie were distributed around Tokyo. On July 15th, Tim met with the Foreign Secretary, I guess the British Foreign Secretary Robin Cook, who was in Japan for a summit at the time, and Robin Cook urged the Japanese public to help in the hunt for Lucie. Tim also mounted his own personal investigation to find her. Like I said, he distributed 30,000 missing person posters with the help of his oldest daughter, Sophie. He rented an office, set up a confidential hotline manned by sympathetic expatriates for people who might have information but are afraid to go to the police. Tim even contacted Yakuza members. If you're not familiar with the Yakuza, they're just like the Japanese, like mafia, I guess. You know, just like a gang basically, but Yakuza is like an umbrella term. It's not just like one gang. Anyway, so Tim even contacted Yakuza members hoping that someone associated with the underworld might have a clue about his daughter. For the next 2 months, from August to October, everyone waited for a break in the case. Despite not being especially wealthy, Tim offered a reward of 1.5 million yen, which is $10,765, for news of Lucie's whereabouts. A wealthy British businessman, hearing of Tim Blackman's difficulties, decided to put up his own substantially higher reward of £100,000, or $120,749. On July 18th, nationwide appeals prompted 100 calls from the public, which detectives followed up with. On July 21st, the Prime Minister of the UK, I think, Tony Blair, meets with the Blackmans during a visit to Tokyo and promises to raise the matter with his Japanese counterpart at a G8 summit in Okinawa that same day, saying, quote, "It is every parent's worst nightmare to have a child working abroad who then disappears." Tony Blair then appealed to the Prime Minister of Japan, Yoshihiro Mori, who was able to kindle a new spirit of cooperation in the Tokyo police. Up until then, the police had kept saying that they were unable to get any information on the phone call made the evening Lucie disappeared because it was technically impossible to trace calls made on cell phones, being that it was 2000. After both the Prime Ministers got involved, the police magically discovered the technology to do it, though. They also found it within their hearts to beef up their investigative force, that in time it would match that in scale and intensity of their probe into the 1995 subway sarin gas attack, during which members of a fanatical doomsday religious cult poisoned morning rush hour commuters. So eventually there were a lot of cops looking into this, but not in the beginning. Lucie's father became widely recognized around Japan after holding 8 different press conferences, becoming almost a celebrity. But not everyone in Japan was sympathetic. One reader wrote a letter to a newspaper saying that Lucie had gotten what was coming to her for working in a place like Casablanca, which was hardly a bastion of moral probity. Another writer commented that if she purposefully took that job without a work visa and other papers, then she should have expected what she got. Because apparently work visas protect you from kidnappers. I mean, I'm not defending like working without a visa, but it's kind of a stretch. An American gang member in Doppongi known as Smokey had this to say, quote, "I think that her problem was that she started to get too involved with her customers. The smart girls come to work, serve their drinks, smile, act stupid, and go home at midnight. They don't accept favors or gifts or after-hours dinner dates from customers, especially from the Yakuza type. That's the road to trouble. In fact, most of them out and refuse to sleep with the Japanese men no matter how much they offer, which when you think about it is race discrimination, but that's the way it is. Look at all the nightclubs in the city that won't let Americans in. On August 1st, Tokyo police receive a letter from someone pretending to be Lucie that says, quote, "I'm doing what I want, so please leave me alone." The detectives and her father both dismissed it as being fake. On August 23rd, a Japanese businessman who was questioned by police about Lucie's disappearance is reportedly found dead in an apartment with a missing person poster of her. On September 1st, on Lucie's 22nd birthday, her family released balloons in Seven Oaks, which was her hometown. Tim Blackman tells a press conference in Tokyo that police are investigating a tip-off that she could have been kidnapped and shipped to Hong Kong with 4 other Western girls to be sold to wealthy men as sex slaves. 2 days later, on the 3rd of September, Lucie's mother, Jane, told the press that Sir Richard Branson has secretly funded a 30-second information appeal to be screened in Japanese movie theaters. An Australian research chemist also claims to have seen a woman resembling Lucie Blackman withdrawing money from a cash machine in Hong Kong between July 16th and 18th. Later that month, on the 20th of September, Tim Blackman, close to despair, flies back to England after having spent tens of thousands of pounds in the unsuccessful effort to find his daughter. Her family ended up spending millions of dollars on the search for her body and were victimized by a gaggle of fake detectives, kidnappers, and psychics, which I'll mention a little bit more later. Several Japanese women named a wealthy businessman, Joji Obara, as a person of interest, saying they had woken up in his bed in the morning with no memories of the night before. Some of these women had already reported Obara to the Tokyo police, but in each case, the police declined to investigate. Honestly, I can't even say anything about the Japanese police for that because the American police do that too. It's messed up. On October 11th, the police questioned businessman Joji Obara, who was 48, over Lucie's disappearance as well as the drugging and raping of other women. And a month later, on November 11th, Obara admits to having met Lucie Blackman, but denied playing any part in her disappearance. So a good little while later, on February 9th, 2001 now, 7 months after her disappearance, police find parts of a body buried in a cave on a beach in Sushi City, just 300 meters away from Obara's seaside condo and close to Tokyo. The body had been cut into 8 pieces, the head had been shaved, and all of it was entombed in cement. DNA tests later revealed that it was Lucie Blackman. It's believed that she was killed in that property of Obara's that the cave was so close to, and authorities thought that she'd probably overdosed, but no blood was found at the scene. I'm not sure if that scene that's being referred to there is in his apartment or in the cave, and Lucie's body was too heavily decomposed to determine a cause of death by that time. So about a month later, on March 30th, 2001, Lucie's funeral was held near her mother's home in Kent, and 500 people attended it. On April 6th, police arrested Obara in connection with Lucie's death. He had already been in their custody since October 2000 on charges of drugging and raping other women, like I mentioned earlier. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Joji Obara now. He was born on August 10th, 1952, to poor Zainichi Korean parents in Osaka. The term Zainichi Korean refers to long-term Korean residents of Japan who trace their roots to Korea under Japanese rule, distinguishing them from the later wave of Korean migrants who came mostly in the 80s, and from pre-modern immigrants dating back to antiquity who may themselves be the ancestors of the Japanese people. So, at the time, Joji Obara was a Korean national and his name was Kim Sung-jong. During his youth, Obara's father worked his way from a scrap collector to being an immensely wealthy owner of a string of properties and pachinko parlors. I think pachinko is like slot machines. What little is known about Obara's early youth had to be gotten from corporate records, a very few old and blurry photos, and the vague recollections of his Japanese schoolmates, and I'll get to why a little bit later. Obara was educated at private Tokyo schools and received daily tutoring in a variety of subjects. At age 15, he enrolled in a prestigious prep school affiliated with Keio University, virtually guaranteeing his acceptance to that university. 2 years later, after his father's death in Hong Kong, Obara inherited property in Osaka and Tokyo. After traveling extensively and graduating from Keio University with degrees in politics and law, he became a naturalized Japanese citizen and legally changed his name to Joji Obara. Obara invested heavily in real estate speculation, gaining assets estimated as much as $38 million due to the bubble economy in the 1980s. After losing his fortune and his firm in the 1990 recession, he was pursued by creditors and reportedly used his business as a money laundering front for the Yakuza syndicate Sumiyoshi Kai, the second largest Yakuza group in Japan, which provided him with substantial income. At the time of his arrest, Obara was, like I said, a wealthy 48-year-old real estate investment company president who had been arrested that month on suspicion of molesting a Canadian bar hostess in an incident that had taken place 4 years earlier. The hostess at the time hadn't reported the case, afraid that the police might not cooperate given the type of work she was doing and the fact that she was there illegally. Her visa wasn't the right visa. She was completely right about that. But then she heard about Lucie Blackman's disappearance and decided to tell Lucie's father what had happened to her using the special hotline that he'd set up. Tim Blackman passed the information to the police, who issued a warrant for Obara and searched his Tokyo home, seizing a truckload of evidence, which included a supply of date rape drugs, more than 400 videos, each of which showed Obara raping an unconscious woman, a lot of whom were Caucasian, but some of whom were also Japanese as well. One of those women was Carita Ridgway. They also found detailed journals Obara had kept of his foreign conquests, more than 50 women in all, as it turned out, along with descriptions of the drugs he'd used on them. Along with the video of Obara raping Carita, detectives found a receipt from the hospital where she was treated, dated the day that she had been dropped off by the mysterious Akira Nishida. Most damning of all was a chilling diary entry that only said, "Carita Ridgway, too much chloroform." Although Carita had been cremated without an autopsy, miraculously the hospital still had a sample of her liver, I guess from the tests that they'd run on it. When it was tested, the sample, it showed that she did, in fact, have toxic levels of chloroform in her body when she died. So it wasn't hepatitis and it wasn't shellfish. Obara was fluent in English and liked fast, flashy foreign cars, Ferraris, Maseratis, Rolls Royces, and this article said he was obsessed with blonde Caucasian women, the company of which he believed gave him a certain cachet among his peers. I'm not sure what the gesture was. Since being with a foreign woman was seen as kind of a status symbol, like I kind of said earlier. And it still is, as a lot of Japanese, Korean, etc. men will want to have sex with or date foreign women, but if you would actually want to marry one or commit to one at all. Of course there are exceptions to that, but it's sort of a thing. The Shukan Post, in a long series about Obara published that autumn, reported that he had plastic surgery on his eyes to make them look more Western, which is a double-lid surgery, also known as an Asian blepharoplasty. He also took back alley growth hormones and wore lifts to extend his 5'8" height, even though he was still a couple inches shorter than Lucie with those. He lived in a house that was palatial, even by the standards of the affluent neighborhood of Tenenchofu. In addition to shifting between residences and going by an assortment of aliases, Obara had also procured a supply of untraceable cell phones just before new regulations requiring owner registration went into effect, which complicated the investigative efforts. I read an article that said Obara probably lured a lot of the women that he victimized by promising them cell phones, because I guess at the time, you had to be a Japanese citizen to get a Japanese cell phone. Wild. Yeah, I guess since you had to register It said that his IQ was estimated to be 200. Foreign hostesses interviewed by police told them how loaded with cash Obara was and how willing he seemed to be to help them out with anything they needed, from finding a new apartment to getting a working visa. One woman reported an incident involving a fellow hostess who said she'd been taken by Obara to an upscale beachside condominium in Sushi, Kanagawa, where the alleged molestation of the Canadian woman took place. A raid of the Sushi seaside premises found hair strands, including those of a blonde coloring, of more than 10 different Caucasian women. A male acquaintance of Obara was quoted by a newspaper as saying he knew of at least 6 hostesses who disappeared after they started dating Obara, and that Obara believed that none of the women would ever report anything to the police because of their illegal visa status. Another woman, an Australian, who had been drugged and raped by Obara, discovered that the police had identified her in one of the videotapes and had sent a copy to her hometown without telling her. She discovered the tape's existence when her hometown police called to inquire about her welfare. Imagine that. Through weeks of interrogation, Obara admitted nothing, insisting all the accusations against him were groundless except for one assault. But neighbors in Sushi told police that they recalled seeing Obara one night around the time of Lucie's disappearance, trying to change the lock on the empty apartment adjoining his. He was spotted with his hands covered in concrete and returning from a nearby beach carrying a shovel. Earlier that month, it was discovered he had paid out millions of yen in cash to buy a motorboat without even inspecting it beforehand, which invited speculation about what sinister use he had been putting it to. He might have raped anywhere from 150 to 400 women. In the journals the police had found, Obara made reference to conquest play, a euphemism describing his sexual assaults on women whom he wrote were, quote, only good for sex, and on whom he sought, quote, revenge on the world, drugging them with chloroform. Apparently Obara never attempted to seduce his victims. He just drugged their drinks, and when they passed out, he would force them to inhale or drink chloroform. He not only filmed the rape of each victim, but he wore a mask in the videos. The rapes were often ritualized and sometimes lasted for several hours. If the victim showed any signs that they were starting to wake up, Obara administered more chloroform. And it's the chloroform that killed the 8 women who died by his hand. By February, the police had charged Obara with 5 copycat rapes of foreign women. I'm not sure what that copycat part means. And those women were, some of whom were Canadian, British, and Australian, and also with the murder of an Australian woman named Carita Ridgway, who obviously I talked about before. According to the police, Obara had taken her home, plied her with drug-laced drinks until she passed out, and then raped her. When he was unable to wake her up after, he picked her up and dropped her off at the nearest hospital, where she of course died a little while later. The cause of death was a drug overdose, or more specifically, hepatic failure, liver failure, which the doctors had mistaken for hepatitis, like I said. And so, that resulted in him actually getting a charge of manslaughter, not murder, because I guess he hadn't intended to kill her when he forced her to inhale a bunch of chloroform and spiked a bunch of drinks, as if that isn't usually the kind of thing that leads to people dying. So in 2001, Carita's parents flew back to Japan, where they identified Obara as the Akira Nishida that they had met. Honestly, why did he meet with them? I mean, to bribe them into being quiet, but that's just a stupid decision for a guy who's supposedly 200 IQ big brain man. On October 10th, 2002, Obara appeared in court to face a plethora of charges: the abduction, rape, and murder of Lucie Blackman and the disposal of her body, the rape charge of an additional 8 anonymous women, and the rape and manslaughter of Carita Ridgway. So almost a year later, July 18, 2003, a con man named Michael Hill, who was 60 years old at the time, was sentenced to 3.5 years in jail for tricking 15,000 pounds out of Tim Blackman. Hill, being from Waterloo, central London, claimed that he had contacts in the Yakuza who could help Lucie, and he admitted to having deceived Tim Blackman. So that's a little bit about what I said earlier, how they got conned out of a bunch of money. So going back in time a little bit, on October 2000, Obara was charged with drugging, raping, and killing Lucie Blackman, as well as raping 8 other women in the manslaughter of Carita Ridgway. Like I said, his trial began on July 4th, 2001. On September 2003, after 23 hearings, Joji Obara's trial moved on to Lucie Blackman's case. And on November 27th, Tim Blackman and Sophie came face-to-face with Obara for the first time at the Tokyo District Court. Obara maintained his innocence throughout the whole trial, claiming that Lucie Blackman was alive and well when they parted. Sure. Prosecutors decided to charge Obara with rape resulting in death rather than murder, and they tried to get a life sentence. Like I said, he pled not guilty. I guess I didn't say that, but if he maintained his innocence, then he probably pled not guilty, right? Throughout his trial, he refused to face the spectators and photographers, so photographs of his face are extremely rare. On the days when the Blackmans were scheduled to testify, Obara refused to leave his cell. Kind of babyish, honestly. His inherited riches are beyond knowing, although his trial, which lasted 6 years, may have seriously cut into that wealth. He owns real estate, like I said, including hotels and parking lots. He has expensive hobbies and owns a dozen of the world's most costly cars. He lives a luxurious, solitary life. I said all that already, but you know. To date, he hasn't ever given a reason for his crimes, other than, what was written in that journal. In one journal entry in his diary, said, quote, "My goal is to have sex with 500 people by the age of 50. And there's another that stated, I can't do women who are conscious." Ugh. Neither the prosecution nor the defense sought to get any kind of testimony by a criminal psychiatrist at Obara's trial. So, who knows what's wrong with him, honestly. Obara never expressed any regret about the deaths, merely dismissing the rapes as part of a game that he had developed for his own amusement. Near the end of the trial, as a token of sympathy for the grieving Blackman family, he asked his lawyers to present a contract that stipulated that he would pay them 1 million yen if Ken Blackman would sign a document that noted that he was skeptical of some of the evidence against Joji Obara. What does that even mean? Like, what does that even matter? What Ken Black... Why does it say Ken? That's a typo. What Tim Blackman thought, like... He's not the judge. What does it even matter? Joji Obara made that offer to all the other families of the victims as well. Just a little bit of a side note. This is stuff that's happening as the trial's going on, but not really related to the trial. On December 2nd, 2004, Tim Blackman and Sophie made a visit to the cave where Lucie's body was found to pay their respects. That cave in Sushi City. On December 24th, 2004, Tim Blackman launched a safety text scheme to protect women while they're out socializing at that Christmas. The scheme allowed people to send a delayed text message if they felt unsafe for any reason but might not want anyone to know where they were or who they were with. On March 23rd, 2005, Lucie's ashes were buried in Seven Oaks, Kent, and more than 4 years after her body was found. So I guess that funeral that I mentioned that they had earlier was just like honorary funeral or something. Like they buried an empty casket, I guess. So as part of Obara's defense, he claimed that Lucie smoked dope, was heavily in debt, and was mentally ill, which the Blackman family were very upset by, as I'm sure you can imagine. On April 25th, 2006, Tim Blackman tells the Tokyo court that the death of Lucie had made her sister attempt suicide because of the grief. Almost a year later, on April 21st, 2007, after a 7-year-long trial, Tim Blackman, 53 at the time, and Sophie, 26 now, flew back out to Tokyo in anticipation of a verdict. So on April 24th, 2007, Joji Obara was found guilty of multiple rape charges and manslaughter, but was acquitted of Lucie Blackman's rape and murder for lack of direct forensic evidence. The evidence supporting his guilt That was Carita Ridgway's manslaughter. The prosecutor produced an autopsy report showing traces of chloroform in Ridgway's liver and a paper trail showing that Obara accompanied her to the hospital before she died. I read somewhere that he's believed to have murdered 8 women. I think I said that earlier, but the information that I have is kind of spotty on that, so can't say honestly. In Lucie Blackman's case, the prosecutor couldn't produce any forensic evidence linking Obara directly to her death. Her cause of death also could not be determined due to how badly decomposed her body was. There was an audible gasp from the gallery of the Tokyo District Court when the judge announced the verdict of acquittal against Obara. Police had failed to provide evidence directly linking him to Lucie's death, according to Judge Tsutomu Tochiki. In particular, he cited their inability to determine under what circumstances the 21-year-old's body had been moved. I don't know why that matters. As a result, rational doubts remained about Obara's involvement, including the possibility that a third party might have played a role, according to Judge Tochiki. Unable to face seeing Obara in person, Lucie's mother, Jane Steer, had decided to stay home in Ghent. She said after the decision, quote, "I'm heartbroken, absolutely heartbroken. I just can't believe this verdict. My worst fears have come true. Things might have been different in a UK or US courtroom when it came to Lucie's case," a former Japanese prosecutor said to the press. Quote, "In the UK or US, judges and juries can understand the circumstances surrounding the evidence," said Takeshi Tsuchimoto, who was the dean of Hakko University Law School. Quote, "Japanese judges are just not used to this kind of evidence. This is a bad judgment for Japan." And what he's referring to is the fact that it's only pretty much circumstantial evidence linking him to Lucie Blackman's case, like I said. And yeah, like in a US courtroom, like that wouldn't matter. Like, he'd be guilty, there wouldn't really be that much doubt about it. But a lot of Japanese cases, the suspect confesses. So, and like a lot of my videos, you can see that, like the majority of them, except for Masumi Hayashi, the curry poisoner, which I have a video on, she didn't confess either. So pretty much the lack of a confession left them kind of high and dry. Despite the acquittal for Lucie Blackman's case, Obara was sentenced to life imprisonment on multiple rape charges in the manslaughter of Carita Ridgway, like I said. Quote, "You have trampled on the dignity of women," the judge said in passing the sentence on Obara, who slumped forward across the table when the verdict was announced, according to Japanese television reports. The public prosecutor appealed the Blackman-related verdicts as crucial forensic evidence had not been heard at the original trial, and on March 25, 2008, an appeal trial began in the Tokyo High Court. The court found Obara guilty on counts of abduction, dismemberment, and disposal of Lucie Blackman's body on December 16, 2008. In early December 2010, the Supreme Court of Japan rejected Obara's appeal and upheld his life sentence. Yeah, so I think he was sentenced to life for what he did to Lucie Blackman, but it didn't matter because he already was sentenced to life, so it didn't really affect his sentence. Obara tried appealing again and again until finally the Supreme Court refused to leave for another appeal, which pretty much slammed the door on his legal maneuvering, and he's now in Chiba prison, which is east of Tokyo. In the wake of Obara's conviction, both Carita's and Lucie's families expressed their frustration at the fact that had the police investigated Carita's death in '92, Lucie might not have, been killed herself. Quote, "Joji Obara is a monster," Annette, Carita's mother, said in an interview. Carita thought he was a funny, harmless old man, but for her and for so many others, Obara was the most dangerous man imaginable. "I try to be happy. I know Carita would want that. I miss her smile. So I cling to that and try to be as happy as I can, but it's not easy. Carita had her life stretching out before her, and then it just stopped. I lost my daughter and everything we'd ever share with her. I'll never know the grandchildren she might have had. Her future disappeared because one man wanted to satisfy some weird sexual urge. There's no closure, not for me. I won't have closure until that man is dead, but even then I'm not sure that will help. Nothing can bring Carita Tim Blackman said that he felt let down by the Japanese court system, where verdicts are determined by 3 judges rather than a jury. When we came out of court, we felt we had received a just sentence of life imprisonment, he told a news conference. But following our meeting with prosecutors, we feel that in many ways Lucie has been robbed of justice. That has us feeling unresolved. He said, "It's simply not geared up to deal with the case and trial of the nature of Lucie's. They depend so heavily on confessions over there, like I said earlier." The Japanese police have been widely criticized over their handling of the case. There was a lot of frustration with how slow the police were to investigate and with the court system for not convicting him in her death. The Japanese legal system is proud of the fact that 99% of cases end with conviction since guilt is proven before the trial begins. By the person confessing. So remember that 1 million yen offer I mentioned that Obara made to all the victims? Tim Blackman actually accepted the money, and he used it to set up the Lucie Blackman Trust that provides aid to young women who travel abroad. He also contributed to charities as well. But he also used that money to buy a yacht named the Infanta. His acceptance of the bribe money alienated him from his daughter Sophie and his son Rupert. Both have undergone extensive psychiatric treatment. Tim Blackman has repeatedly said that accepting the money in no way implies forgiveness. He spent thousands of pounds traveling to Japan to push forward the investigation into his daughter's death, and so obviously that probably played a part in him wanting some money to buy a yacht. Lucie Blackman's family today say that they still don't know how she died, even 13 years after her body was found in Japan. An inquest at Croydon Coroner's Court on October 17, 2013 recorded an open verdict into her death, which, from what I could find, basically means that they couldn't figure out a cause of death either. They don't know. After the hearing, Lucie's father, Tim, who was 60 at the time, said, "I really hope they could have gone through it all and come up with some suggestion of how Lucie died." Over the course of the several months it took for the case to unfold, there were reams of stories in Japanese about Lucie, which made Lucie's face familiar to everyone in the country. Japanese TV, radio, and print commentators analyzed the story from every conceivable angle: racial, sexist, legal, moral, trying to figure out what it revealed, if anything, about the Japanese psyche. Did Japanese men have an unhealthy attraction to blonde Western women? Was Japan becoming an immoral country? Did Japan really discriminate against foreigners? The answer is yes. For example, this is just like stuff that I've heard about personally, it's really, really hard to get an apartment in Japan as a foreigner, even if it's with your Japanese boyfriend, girlfriend. They think that since you're a foreigner, you can just up and go back to your home country and not pay your rent anymore, leaving them with an empty apartment and no money. Which I guess is like possible, but why would you assume that about every single person? In Japan, as far as I know, there aren't any anti-discrimination laws like we have in the US, and other countries have too. So a Japanese landlord could literally say, "I'm not going to rent to you because you're a foreigner," and you can't do anything about that. In the US, if a landlord said, "I'm not going to rent to you because you're black, Jewish, foreign, Muslim, whatever," and you had that in writing or a recording, you could probably sue them. Maybe. I don't know. I feel like you could. But yeah, not in Japan. It just sucks to suck in Japan. The English language press did its fair share of theorizing as well. In a breathless, grandiose cover story in Time Asia, for example, a writer equated the Lucie Blackman case to nothing less than a national wake-up call for Japan, terming Lucie, quote, "the poster child of a nation that was suddenly unaware of where it was going and of what was happening to it," and calling the case, quote, "synonymous with millennial Tokyo's anxieties, aspirations, and insecurities." I don't know what that means. The fact that Obara lived in a multi-million-dollar suburban Tokyo mansion that had gone to seed in the wake of the deflated bubble economy, its iron gates rusting, face crumbling, the garden full of trash, was to Time editors a clear metaphor for the sorry state of modern Japanese society as a whole. A similar series of events was seen in the March 2007 murder of a UK English teacher, Lucy Hawker, at the hands of a Japanese martial artist who raped and strangled her to death. I'm probably going to do a video on that. He was captured by police after 2.5 years on the run. Perhaps because of the involvement of the Prime Minister in her case, or just because of the high-profile investigation into her disappearance, Lucie Blackman's name is now inextricably linked with Joji Obara's, her face synonymous with the dark side of Japan. In the reporting of Obara's misdeeds, particularly in the UK, Carita's story remains a footnote, just a passing mention of the crime he nearly got away with. You know, because she was Australian, I guess. Whereas, like, Lucie Blackman was British. So, that's all I have for the case. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching. And as I said before, please leave me a little comment, a like, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I'd very much appreciate it. I'm at 600 right now, so hopefully I'll be able to get to 1,000 pretty soon. That'd be really nice. Maybe a nice Christmas present. Let me know what you thought about this case down in the comments. Now that I'm on winter break, I'm going to try and upload a little bit more regularly. Hopefully